everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 64 of Monster. We're getting down to the wire. Getting down to the wire. We only have 11 episodes left. No big deal. It's fine. It's fine. Last episode was really weird. It was a transitional episode for sure. There wasn't much to say about it. It was mainly about this cab driver who is a serial killer, and he, along with several others, have been supposedly been given different people to kill from Johan based on him writing their names in a sandbox in a park, and Rudy gets the wonderful task of figuring out that it's him. The cool thing was last episode that we got Weisbach, who is a detective from way back in like episode 3 and 4, like 60 episodes ago, who has now turned back up, who has connections to being on the case with the twins, and he's getting connected with Rudy, and Rudy thinks something is happening. Something's about to go down in Frankfurt. It's all being set up, and Tinma and Nina that he knows of are headed to Frankfurt to supposedly meet up with Johan, and we know that Eva is headed there. So the crazy thing is we don't really know. We know Nina seeing the footage of Peter on the video screen, but is she going to come in contact with Peter before Johan? Is Tinma going to find Peter before Johan? What is Tinma doing now? We don't know exactly. Where the hell is Lunge? We don't know. It's all over the place. So we just don't know exactly what's going on, but it's crazy. And last week was, surprisingly, the episode was really straightforward, and it was a good episode, but there wasn't a whole lot to talk about, but it feels like it's setting up for some big things. And we only have 11 episodes left in the entire series, which seems like a lot, but we're on episode 64, so things are going to have to start going down. And the question is, how are they going down? That remains to be seen. So, yeah. I have decided, though, that I think what I want to do is the week after I am finished with Monster, and before we dive into the series that will follow it, I think what I would like to do is do like a video where I review the manga, the last manga volume, because that'll be a whole thing where I review the last manga volume and then do like maybe a character tier. If I can find a character tier online that's got all the characters from Monster, we could do a ranking of that and talk about my favorite episodes and just do kind of like a mini recap. Don't make it to the level of Attack on Titan. It's not going to be that, but a series this big. This is probably, one of the longest series I've watched outside of like Ace of the Diamond, which is a sports anime, but it is the longest like week to week anime that I've seen in a very long time, and I feel like it deserves to have its own little like manga recap and talking about the characters and then that. So I thought about that the other day because I realized by the time I finish the anime, you guys are going to be able to see if there's any differences in the manga volume. So I wanted to make a video about that. So that'll come whenever I finish the series. So we'll just have to wait and see, but that's exciting nonetheless, right? Right? So we'll just have to see, but I'm really looking forward to it. So in any case, I don't have any other comments to make at this point. I'm just excited to see what's going to happen. And hopefully this episode, we get the ball kind of rolling because like I said, we've only got so many episodes left and we have a lot of ground to cover. So with that being said, we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to dive right into episode 64 of Monster. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Remember how last week I was like, oh, well, there's not a lot happening? Never mind. What the fudge? Oh my god. So yeah, hi, Whiteboard Coon's back, because Johan's back. What is with this Bonaparte guy having all these damn children? Why? Trying to sire an Aryan race or something? Oh my god. Ugh. Or something similar? Oh my god. So yeah, last week was a setup episode showing us that Rudy was like, something's going down in Frankfurt. And here we are in Frankfurt and there's shit going down. Oh my god. So, wow. This was such a good episode, and it was so creepy, and it was just tense, and Peter, oh my god, Peter Kopchek, or whatever his name is, Johan, what is going down? So Johan is wanting to find Bonaparte. That that Johann wants to kill Bonaparte, I'm sure, right? Which is just insane. So let's put Johann up here, right? Let's put Johann up here, and let's put Nina over here. We got Nina here doing all that sort of thing. And then we've obviously got Peter and all of that business here. And then we'll put Bonaparte right here, right? Oh my gosh. Remember when Tenma was just on a mission to find a serial killer and kill him, you know, because he felt bad, and now we're finding out all this shit that's gone along with it. It's like, oh my gosh. This is the thing. Like, Monster is such a good series in terms of building up this tension, and it's very much what it doesn't show you that makes you freaked out even more. Like, I'm easily scared by horror movies and horror manga. This is like along the same lines, because like with Baby's death, they don't show you what happened to Baby, but you know he's dead. He's been murdered, and your imagination kind of fills in the gaps for what you don't know happened to Baby, and you're like, well, what did she do? So, holy cow, let's talk about this episode, man. Let's talk about this episode, and let's talk about Baby getting his comeuppance, right? Because we start this episode off and we end it in cars. I will never be able to think of driving in a car in an anime and have as much tension as I do with cars in Monsters. I don't know what Urasawa has against automobiles, but in every episode of Monster where you're in a car, something is going down. Either you're getting abducted, you're about to hit something or someone, you're remembering flashbacks of trauma, or someone's trying to hurt you, or you get killed in the car. Like, I don't think there's a scene of Monster involving people in a car that is not at least filled with anxiety, and at the least anxiety, like with Martin and Robbie taking him to go see Tenma, and at the most this guy just straight up gets shot because Peter's so paranoid. Oh my god. So yeah, wow. So okay, we'll also put Baby here because Baby needs to be put down here. So Baby has been buying the attention, among other people, of this woman, right? That's the deal. He's been buying the attention of this woman and talks about flowers and everything, and lovely objectification to start us off. Isn't it great? And then designer clothes and bags. Kind of feels very reminiscent of Eva, talking about like the materialism of it all. And then I had no idea who it was all from. And then it was you, wasn't it? I felt something special when I saw your show the first time. So yeah, so Baby basically has been buying the attention of this woman and giving her all these lavish things. Lovely, isn't that great? I wondered when we saw that it was her, for a hot second, and I'm sorry in the reaction, but ever since we found out that Opie Mother Trucker is like Johann's half-brother as well, then it's just like, oh my god. For a second, I was like, is Opie doing drag? Is he doing drag as well? And he killed Baby because he was threatened? And then I quickly was like, no, that's not the case at all. Why am I thinking that? They have different noses. What am I doing? But we'll talk about him. We're going to put him over here. Yeah, so we know Bonaparte has a son named Lipsky, who is being interviewed by Lunge and is the puppeteer, right? Which is kind of hilarious that he's a puppeteer, but he's not the one pulling the strings of this entire operation. That's kind of ironic and funny. Then we have this guy that I'm going to call Opie, that we think is the son of Bonaparte, and he's been involved in all these scandals, and his profession is being a little shit. Because he is absolutely a monster. He's the monster. He's terrifying. He's like, how many people can I get killed by just all the scandals I'm in? I'm like, what the fudge? We're going to talk about him. But he's literally a devil. He's a demon, this little imp. And they may be Johann and Nina's half-siblings. Obviously, they're not full siblings, but they are also possibly Bonaparte's children as well, because he was just siring all these kids to have experiments on. I don't think Grimmer can be his kid too. I think Grimmer's too old for that. But, oh my god, because he was like born in the 60s, and not the 80s like Johann and them, but who knows? Oh my god. The fudge. What in the fudge is going on? And she's like, what do you mean something special? And he says something you can't see with your eyes. And she's like, oh, I wish you'd just come to my dressing room. And he's like, just as myself. And she's like, oh, what do you mean? Aren't you the baby? And he's like, oh, well, you seem like you would listen to my story. We don't get to know the baby's name, which is so, that is frustrating, honestly, because this chapter is called The Baby's Depression, which, the baby's death as well, but we don't get to know his name, which is, I feel like it's Urasawa saying you don't need to know his name. Does it matter if you know his name? Does it change who he is if you know his name? Does that make a difference? The answer is no. So it is what it is. What's so weird about the baby's character in this is that even though he's awful, even though he's done such horrible things and he's a shit person and he's terrifying, he's still human. And that's kind of the weird thing Urasawa does with his character. He reminds you that the baby is a human. He is subject to depression. He is subject to fear. He is subject to being worried. It's just like, what's bizarre is that they try in this episode to paint him in a somewhat sympathetic light, that for a split second you go, I kind of am feeling a little bit bad for you because you're clearly way in too deep and you're at the bottom of the ladder and you're going to be the first rung that they chop off if they need to. So in that regard, you almost feel bad for him. Almost. And right about that time, you think you're going to start feeling bad for him. Then he's like, I just wanted to be like Hitler. And it's like, oh, thank goodness. Glad we got that jolt of reality. Thank you, series, for that. It's so weird, though. There's a lot of callbacks. We've been having a lot of callbacks to the beginning of the series these last few episodes. Last episode, it was with Weissbach showing up. And here, it's literally with Baby being, we go back to the same restaurant in Frankfurt. They talk about the Turkish fires from early on in the series. He remembers Nina, who he pissed his pants around because he's so terrified of her. We're going to talk about that. And then we come back to the idea of food and company. The idea of food and company and isolation. There's a couple of shots of food and whining and dining in this episode. For example, and they talk about the relationships, which is very funny. For one example, Baby has the meal with the woman that he pays to have her there. She's not there because she wants to be there. She's there because he's paying her, so we think. And then later on, it seems like she pays for his ice cream, and she buys, let me put here, she buys ice cream, but it's paying for company. So there's this notion of like creating an artificial relationship is essentially what it is. And Baby talks about how he's had to pay to have people eat with him so that he wouldn't be alone. We've established in this show that food and eating with people is an act of camaraderie and it builds trust in a relationship. In Baby's case, it's suggesting that trust is artificial and he's just paying for it, but it's not the real deal, right? The second instance we see people gathered together is when Peter, I guess I might as well put Peter on here. We'll put Peter here. Where Peter, who is paranoid as F, put him on here. Yay! We see him meet with the two bodyguards, and they have a meeting, and there's like no trust established between them. They're all kind of wary around each other, and which he now has every right to be wary, and there's no food being exchanged between them, so it shows that there's no trust or camaraderie there. And then at the end, we see Johann, who has confronted Peter, and he's met him at his villa, which we'll put on here, met Peter at villa, and has the wine shared. But that's the other time we see wine and drink shared between them, and Peter thinks he's about to be poisoned, but then Johann, he drinks the wine himself, and he's like, oh, but look, I'm drinking it too, so I'm fine. But he's just so paranoid, he doesn't really even think about it. It's interesting, right? It's very neat. So yeah, she's like, I always eat alone. Do you always have meal company with meals? He's like, yes, I pay for it. And she's like, why? Because he's like, why? He's like, looking back, I had a lot of people over to have a good time, and I felt like I was eating alone. So at this part, you start to feel a little bit bad that you're like, the concept that he's had to pay people to have dinner with him because nobody else wants to. I mean, there is a human portion of your soul that kind of goes, well, that sucks. Having to pay for dinner seems like a sad thing to happen. But then the conversation turns. And he's like, oh, I'm having fun. He's like, think we can make this a regular thing. And so he's like, I've made my own kingdom in Frankfurt. And he talks about how, then he says, I fought to create a new order. And you're like, well, the conversation's starting to take a turn. And he says, my dream is to become like the fur Hitler. And I was like, oh, okay, never mind. Forget about that feeling bad thing. Good feeling gone. So his whole goal was to be like Hitler and create a new order. What's interesting here is the concept of the monster and the title of a monster, right? Because he Bonaparte has this program that seems to be tied to Kinderheim. It's tied to Kinderheim, but it's also separate and it's its own thing, right? And we assume that like Wolf, who oversaw parts of Kinderheim, took some inspiration from Bonaparte and did that. So, all right, we have the four. We're also going to put the four generals on here. We have General Wolf. We also have Peter. We have this guy whose name started with a G, but he's dead. He died back at the mansion with Wolf. And then he was the guy that had the weird fruit. I think he had the meeting with Nina and they were talking over the weird pears or whatever. Yeah. And then there is Bonaparte. The thing about it is, Bonaparte, is he dead or alive? Johann thinks he's alive and thinks that he's alive and kicking and wants to go find him. Baby makes the note that he's dead, so Opie might think that he's dead. I thought he was alive all this time. Honestly, I thought that he was alive the entire time and that was just a thing. So, who knows? I guess we're going to find out. I was hoping he was alive. When they said late, I was like, well, if he's died, then we're on a ghost chase, right? But I don't think that's the case. Anyway, so yeah, baby wants to be Hitler. Good for him. And then I like her response, which at the time you're just like, girl, were you listening? Because it's the 90s when this is going on. This isn't like, in the 50s where that would be like a somewhat normal thing in Germany to say, and not the 50s, in the 1930s or something, if you said you want to be like Hitler, well, that's during World War I and World War II. Okay. But saying it in the 90s, somebody says they want to be like Hitler, that's like ultra red flags going off. And she's like, well, I want to be a dancer. And I'm like, girl, what you... But now that we know that she killed him, it makes sense that she said that. She didn't want to put out a red flag that she was suspicious about him or that she was off-put by his statement. So her saying that she just wants to be a dancer and making it sound like the most natural thing in the world, he thinks that she's somebody that he can trust. And he's like, okay. And then he says, this is the first time I felt like this. I'm scared. There is so much tension in this episode, and there's all of this power dynamics of who is in control of what. Who is in control. And Baby clearly is established in this episode at being the bottom of the ladder. Peter, though, at the beginning of this episode, you think that Peter's at the top of the ladder because you think Bonaparte is dead. You think that the Opie kid is just this brat who's a psychopath. And then you think Peter is in charge and in control. And by the end of the episode, it's like, well, maybe he's not in control. The weird thing is, okay, so Johann has met with the brother, with Opie, right? He's met with him. They've talked. They met in the hotel together. So if that were the case, the Opie guy's still alive, so Johann didn't kill him. I thought Johann killed him. But that's not what happened. And I'm like, what? That's not what happened at all. He didn't kill him. So what did he tell Johann? What did they talk about? If Johann's trying to meet up with Bonaparte, then is Opie trying to meet up with him too? the fudge? We're going to talk about this real quick. We're going to talk about this in a hot second, but I want to... My dog just knocked himself into the door. But yeah, he's like the 3 murders that happened in the last month. And Peter says it was Johan's will. Okay. So the murders. We can talk about the 3 murders. Peter is convinced that the murders were Johan's will. Okay? Whatever that means. Saying that it was Johan who willed the murders to happen, okay? And Baby's like, yeah, so that is true, sure. And he's like, I know the meaning of the bank employee overt. So there's an investment banker that they're like, that makes sense why we had to kill him because that has to do with OP scandals. And then the second thing was the general store owner's daughter, Frieder. So now we understand why she was killed. She was the general store's owner. So there's some scandals. So there's the owner's daughter. I'm assuming the owner's daughter could have also had a relationship with Opie, and that was a big scandal. And Baby's like, yeah, he's like, we had to hide scandals by killing them. Sure, I can understand those 2 murders, which to say you can understand those murders sets a precedent for this entire episode, right? But his thing is, he's like, but then we have the foreign trader. He's like, that is not connected to the scandals. And he goes, do you know him? And Peter doesn't answer the question. He's like, he doesn't have anything to do with Johan. And he's like, do you really think so? Like, Baby seems like he's very suspicious that Johan is having all of this stuff orchestrated. And Baby kind of is under the impression that Johan is pulling more strings than he should have the right to and is controlling more than he should be able to control. And he's like, are we sure this isn't about to teeter out of our control and into Johan's? And Peter is kind of delusional, and he's like, oh, no, we're fine. Everything's under control. And Baby's like, I don't think it is. So then there was the traitor that is not a scandal. And Baby's kind of like, are we sure that this guy wasn't killed because Johan wanted him out of the way because he's tied to Kinderheim and all this other business, right? Do we really know where Johan came from? That being asked there in that moment, and Peter doesn't question it. And that look, that just that silence between him and Baby. Oh my God. It was so well done. Because yeah, Baby's kind of under the impression, he's like, this is kind of weird. Johan's having us kill these people, and yeah, 2 of them are tied to the investment scandals of this redheaded mofo, but the 3rd one is tied to something that's personally invested with Johan. So are we sure that we've got this under control? So I'm wondering, did Johan meet up with Opie and decide that these murders had to take place? Like, I want to know what happened in that hotel room between Johan and Bonaparte's other kid. I want to know. And he's like, are you hiding something from me? Oh my God. And he's like, well, there's no use worrying about it. Have you found where Nina is? So yes, they are hiding something from Baby. They don't want Baby to know everything. And they ask if they found out where Nina is. And she's like, yeah, she's coming this way. And he's like, our priority is to secure her. And then that's when Baby's like, yeah, here's the thing. She's Johan's sister. Do you know that? So they're trying to, Peter wants to, quote unquote, secure her, which means kidnap her. And Baby's terrified of Nina because he knows what she's capable of. And then he talks about back in the past when she confronted him, and Baby's like, those eyes back then. And honestly, her eyes were fierce because she's like, you're threatening. She was like defending herself and threatening him. When she held the gun, her eyes at me when we burned down the Turkish district. It makes me shiver thinking about them. And that's when Peter says, isn't it wonderful? Are you talking about the program you built? So, apparently, Peter believes that Nina is also one of these agents of the program. Which she did try to strangle Rudy when that whole welcome home thing happened. She did try to strangle Rudy. So it's possible she's been brainwashed too. And she's like Grimmer. And it's just this latent stuff that only pops up when it's triggered. Right? Could very well be. Although the whole welcome home thing with Rudy, she was out of it and hypnotized when she tried to strangle him. When she got mad at Baby, it's because he killed someone that she cared about. So at this point, we don't know enough to really go through it. That he's like, are you talking about the program? And he says, I only helped with it. Yeah, he assisted. It was my master's doings. It's proceeding according to his program. So Peter is absolutely, he is dedicated to Bonaparte's program. I swear at the end, it was like a light Yagami keikaku off, where Johan was like, it's going according to my plan, and Peter's like, it's going according to my plan. I was just waiting for light Yagami to pop up and be like, it's all according to cake on my part too, and then just, but interesting. And Baby's kind of weirded out by this, the idea, because Baby, his dream of being like Hitler means that you're the leader of something. And I think throughout this episode, Baby has slowly realized in his time with Peter and the others that he is very, very far down the ladder. He is possibly expendable, and his dreams of being the leader of something and having this kingdom that he thought he had is just an illusion and it's not real. Which is funny because a lot of this story is about perceiving that you have things and have this power that you actually don't have. So that's so fascinating. And then he's like, is it all really proceeding according to his plan? And I think Baby was kind of starting to realize too that Peter believes he's delusional in thinking that everything's going according to what Bonaparte wants, but Peter's not Bonaparte. He can't know. And if Bonaparte is actually alive and working independently of Peter and them, well, then that opens up a can of worms too. So I feel like Baby was starting to come to a lot of realizations, and one of them being that things are not going well and that he is in danger, which then we talk about her getting the ice cream. She buys him the ice cream, and then that's when we go back to Opie in the green suit. I don't need a bodyguard. And he's like, no one knows who I really am. He kind of looks like Johan a little bit, and he looks a little bit like Lipsky too. So he is the one that I'm honestly more worried about him than I am almost of Johan, because at least Johan is creepy but seems to almost show restraint, or isn't just out there parading around that he's happy people are dying. Johan at least keeps it somewhat subtle, but this guy is not subtle at all. And he says, it'll cause us a lot of grief if we let you go out on one of your joy rides again. And then he says, I don't go out on joy rides. I'm like, oh my God. And Baby's like, I hate this. Like, you can just feel under the surface the silence of this episode. Anytime Baby just stares at someone, it's just like internally screaming. He's just like, I can't stand what's happening. And he says, 3 people have died to hide your scandals. And then he just goes, He just like goes, oh really, did they? And he says, how many people can I kill without getting caught? So hell, I'm wondering if, like, the thing of it is, this show, because the only concrete person we have seen Johan kill is Junkers, because that's the only concrete evidence we have to show of who's killed who, this show makes you really question in your mind, okay, is Johan really responsible for all of these deaths? Or what about this guy? What about this redheaded mofo? Is he responsible for any? He's just having a good old time claiming all these deaths in his name. But then Peter thinks it's Johan, so I'm just floored that they met in a hotel, and Johan and this redhead, and the redhead's still alive. So what did Johan say to him? What happened? Did Johan even go to the room? Martin didn't look. So did Johan even go to the hotel room that the redhead was in, or did he go stay in the hotel room next to him, like keeping tabs on him? Was the Opie kid waiting for Peter and Johan just went to the room next door? We don't know. We don't know. Eventually we've got to go back to that hotel room and find out what they talked about. There has to be some kind of connection, because they've met and they're half brothers. I'm pretty darn sure. What is going on? And then Baby's like, who do you think gave you the power you hold now? Yeah, he definitely, I feel like he just has a look kind of like Johan, but his eyes are all different. The 4 founders of the organization gave you this power. Giedlitz is the one that died. Wolf, Kupchak, and then your late father. I know you can't just take your father's place, but it's not an easy task. So yeah, this guy thinks he's going to become the next Bonaparte. The fudge, I tell you. So I'm like, I guess my confusion, and I don't want answers to this question because I know I'm going to find out in the next several episodes. We've only got 11 episodes left. My thing is, what is Johann's goal with the redhead? If he kept him alive, why? Especially if he's trying to stop Bonaparte and find Bonaparte, why keep the brother alive or the son of him alive? What's the point, right? It's also weird. If Bonaparte is the father of both this redhead and Lipsky, they're very different individuals, but they're both got a creepiness undertone to them, which fits Johann to a T. It's like Bonaparte's kids are all kind of creepy. He says, we don't know if you're cut out for the job. And he says, are you trying to say you're the one who's going to take his place? And he's like, I know about your hidden scandals. And he says, well, you know what happens to people who know about them. It's a threat, yeah. He's like, I don't want to make you the leader of the extremists in Frankfurt my enemy. Oh my God. Terrifying. Terrifying. So yeah. So then there's this moment where you think that there's a genuine relationship between Baby and this woman. You think it's possibly real, that she actually likes him. And in your head, you're thinking, him? As much as you want to treat Baby maybe like a person, it's like, really, him? Girl, you're hot. You could do way better. But then she's going to kill him, so it all makes sense after that. She's the assassin, right? And she woos him. She seduces him with the promise of company. Like, he didn't have sex with her until they went to the hotel, and I'm sure he didn't there. I'm sure she killed him. But he wasn't having sex with her or anything. He was just buying her company. And she seduced him into letting her to his hotel. And at first she's like, oh, well, should I escort you back to the hotel? And then he, gets that little misogynistic laugh like, oh, I don't need a woman to protect me. And then that's when he tries to offer money and she snubs him because that's, she's like, how dare you pay for me? And that's when he gets like, it's a perfect, just perfect reeling him in, right? She reels him in. And he lets her go to the hotel. And then she says, but what's your real name? And he says the name, but we don't get to find out what it is. I'm like, I don't know if next episode we're going to find out, like in his obituary or something, what the baby's name is. The point is we don't need to know. The baby is the baby. And the baby got threw into the bath water. Literally, it's like when you throw the baby out with the bath water, that phrase. We literally put Baby in the bath water and they died there. That was the joke. Urasawa has a very dark, twisted mind and humor. But I do love the scene afterwards I love the scene of when the bodyguards call Peter and the record skips when it's trying to say Baby, and then they have that meeting afterwards, and the guards are like, did you order this hit? Because if you did, you're making a mockery of us. Why are we protecting somebody you were going to kill anyway? It's crazy. The elevator scene, the perspective, it's so creepy. And then he goes in, and again, our imagination gets to fill in the dots. All we see is the blood, and that's it. Meanwhile, we see this record playing that says classic Schallplatte ticket, and it's Rosa Roth. I don't know. I love when it skips when he's trying to talk to him on the phone, right? And then he calls him in there saying the baby's been murdered. Meanwhile, Peter's having these weird visions and dreams of the past where he went and to take who looks like Nina away. Yeah, that looks like Nina being taken away. So the question is, if he was taking Nina away, Johann was left up in the room, right? There's still so much mystery, and we're down to the wire, right? So we have the two bodyguards who are questioning if he had the baby killed. And they're like, this is going to be a problem because Baby, even though they were at the bottom of the ladder, supposedly, they did have some push and pull in the organization. And the balance is going to be thrown off now, and there's going to be a power vacuum, and things are going to be very, very messy. So they're like, if you ordered this kill, you need to tell us. And Peter's like, why do you think I called you here after the baby's death? And the bodyguard says, because you feel threatened. I love that the bodyguard just like, cut to the chase. He's like, because you feel threatened, like, because we're supposed to protect you. Who killed the baby? Are we really controlling Johan's actions? And that's this whole thing, is that Peter has this illusion of control. Whether it's from Bonaparte, whether it's through Johan, he believes that he's in control, and Johan is very much not in their control. He's doing whatever he damn well pleases, and they can't control that. And he's like, what are you scared of? Everything's going according to plan. Everything. And then we see Johan's eyes. Oh, that's such a good animation of Johan's eyes in that shot. Oh. And then Peter's like, I want to go to my villa. And they're like, let's take you somewhere safe. And then they're like, Nina's in Frankfurt. And they're like, well, go secure her. And they tell him to do it right now. So, okay. So, the one guy went to go get Nina, supposedly. I'm glad Dieter's not with her. I'm glad he's back with Reichwein. I think that's right. And so, meanwhile, he's like, two of the bodyguards are supposed to meet him at the villa. And then this scene in the car is so tense. And what's tense about it is the whole time they're driving, that car's like it's just like you can hear the engine revving. You can hear it getting faster and faster. I kept thinking a deer or something was going to pop out in front of the car and it was just going to smash into it, because you expect it to just, you expect, like, as the engines are revving and it's getting tenser and tenser, you just expect the little tiny thing to snap, like the little band to snap, and something crazy is going to happen, is what you expect is going to happen. Just the tension. And they're like, you're a very lucky man. And then we find out that Peter saw Milan's face and he recognized him. Oh, he knew it was him. So he knew Milan tried to kill him. He doesn't know why, which is interesting, unless he does, but we don't think that he does. But he recognized Milan, and that Milan had introduced him and got him into the country. So whether or not Peter realizes why Milan tried to kill him, we don't know that. We don't know that. We just know that he knows the man, his friend, that tried to shoot him and ended up getting killed instead. And it's just like with Wolf. It's like they're paying for their sins. Everyone around them that surrounded them is gone. And that's kind of the true with Baby. Baby didn't have anybody to begin with. He was just hiring people because everybody else had already left him. He was alone. And then he ends up hiring the woman that kills him. And with Wolf, we know he had just had everybody around him getting picked off one by one. And now Peter is seeing everyone that he knew get picked off one by one. And so it's just like, they're all getting their comeuppance, right? And it's like Johan's this grim reaper that's coming to, like, make them all suffer for their sins. It's just, it's like we want to call him Lucifer, but he's literally like, Gabriel coming down to kill them all. And then we see him when he's younger, Peter, meeting Bonaparte. You've shown me something amazing. The timeline is weird in Monster because we're not exactly sure. The show doesn't tell us exactly when all of this is happening in order. So I'm assuming at some point we're going to get the whole story in full. But as to what that's going to look like, I'm curious. And he's like, let me ask you about your new program. And then he pulls out these kids' books saying, read this. And yeah, God, they won't show us his face. It's in the shadows, in the darkness, of course, because he's the monster. But we've seen like little glimpses of his face. But the problem is, like what we found out with Nina's flashback of Peter, we can't rely on the memory of these characters because they're not correct. There's been inconsistencies. So, it's annoying. And then, yeah, he reads all the books. Everything is drawn in these. And then he sees the twins. These children are growing exactly as Franz Bonaparte's program dictates. Uh-huh. And then he's like, they're children who are going to lead the human race, right? Oh my God. Like just raising up these little Hitlers to rule humanity according to you. Oh my God. Like literally raising monsters. What's interesting is Opie, whatever his face is, he seems to be a monster that's wanting to be ahead of the program, right? Nina does not seem to be wanting to be in the program at all. Lipsky was the failure. Lipsky wasn't good enough to be in the program, so that's why he was denied. And then you have Johan, who was good enough to be in the program, but doesn't seem to want to be in the program. So it's interesting. We've got four kids that we think are Bonapartes, right? We have Lipsky, who is the failure, right? He went south. He went south. Then we have, if we're looking on the compass, we have east and west, right? We have east and west. Johan is the one that's east, right? The one that has the name, right? And then we have this one guy who I've been calling Opie. We don't know his name, but he wants to be in charge. Johan has the aptitude. He's the one best designated by Bonaparte standards to be in charge. And then you have Nina, who does not want anything to do with it. Interesting. Which, it's crazy. And she doesn't care about her name or anything like that. She's had all sorts of names this entire time. So we have the West, the East, the North, and the South. I'm just like, I want to know more about Bonaparte and like all this ridiculousness, right? It's creepy. And then Peter seeing her and then seeing the baby. Is he putting two and two together? The thing is, we get all this imagery from Monster, but they don't explain it. So it's like, well, maybe you'll figure it out. And it's like, what do you mean maybe you'll figure it out? And that's when he has them stop because he thinks his life's in danger. The thing about it is, he wasn't wrong. Johan was waiting for him at the villa. If he just left, it would have been fine. He never would have met Johan. And the creepy thing is when the car stops, the headlights are pointing light towards the villa where Johan's waiting for him. And all you can see in the back seat are the back tail lights, the tail headlights. And it's like red like hell. It's like heaven in front, hell in the back. Oh, the imagery. It's great. And that scene is so damn tense. And he's like, the way that it's lit in red behind him, he's like, is there a guarantee that no one knows I'm going to my villa? And he's like, yeah, these guys are trustworthy. Let's go. And he's like, we're not going there. Like his gut told him not to go. And he should have listened, right? But then he shot that guy and he had nowhere else to go. I'm like, no offense, I would have gotten in the car and would have drove away. Wouldn't have gone to the villa. But he went anyway. Oh my God. And he just shot that man. And then realized the man was not moving towards a gun. He was moving towards a cigarette lighter. And then he just laughs it off. Oh my God. Like Peter got a couple screws loose, right? But it's like, where do you go with the car with a dead body in it? If you try to move him over and drive the car, you're going to get blood all over you. So what do? Well, you walk up to the villa. And he asks if anyone's there. And then he walks in and sits in the chair, right? The chair where the moment you saw the bottle of the wine in the glass, I've been like, that's the last thing I'm going to pour. Because that looks like it's staged. That looks like it's set there just for me. Like Johan was expecting him to come. And then he starts drinking the wine and Johan's like, oh, having fun? And that's when he sees him in the shadows. God, that's the scariest thing because you can't see Johan's head. It's just him in the shadow with the glass of wine just clutching it like a little tiny bird. Oh my God. Terrifying. And then he's like, I've seen people drink that wine at the Red Rose Mansion. And the guy's like, shit, I could be poisoned. And he tries to make himself throw up. And Johan's like, well, I'm drinking it too, so it's fine. I want to know, like, how did he know what's happening? Oh my God. And him sitting down. And he said, what happened to the bodyguards that are supposed to be here? And Johan doesn't answer him. Oh my God. He's like, why did you kill the baby? I feel like Johan just showed up before the bodyguards were even supposed to be there. I feel like Johan just showed up waiting for him to come back. And I feel like the bodyguards aren't there yet. They're going to show up after Johan leaves. I have a feeling that Johan did not orchestrate the baby's death, but I could be wrong. I feel like either Opie orchestrated the baby's death, or that woman that got to know baby was like the daughter of one of the Turkish women that were killed in the fires, or the sister of one of them, or something like that. And she found out he was responsible for the fires, and she killed him on her own. And then it's not even related to Johan. So the whole thing about the 3 murders that Rudy believes are connected to Johan, we found out that they're murders to cover up Opie scandals. So then that raises the question of, well, was Johan the one that wrote the names in the sandbox, or was it Opie? Was it even Johan? We don't know. That's the crazy thing. Was it Johan or was it the other guy? We don't know. We suspect that it's Johan because it seems to fit the pattern we know of, but I don't know at this point. That's the crazy thing. We don't have enough answers to know for sure, and everything's kind of being thrown in suspicion. And that's when Peter's like, well, we were supposed to be working together. You helped us, and we were to find your sister. And that's when Peter says, everything is going according to plan. Or Johan says that. And he says, well, we'll soon have your sister. Uh-huh. If anything happens to me, your sister... Like, he tries to make that threat, being like, if anything happens to me, your sister's going to be dead. And he says, I won't let you have your way. Got it? Everything is going according to my calculations. So... we have this power dynamic of Johan versus Peter. And who's going to have more power than the other? Who's going to get their way in the end? I'm going to say it's probably going to be Johan. Because Johan has more resources. And he's like, what am I? The monster inside of me isn't inside of me. This line here, where Johan's like, well, what am I? Because the monster that's supposed to be inside of me isn't there. He's outside of me. Uh-huh. He says it's outside of me. He doesn't say he. And Peter's like, what are you saying? And that's when Johan says Franz Bonaparte. Oh my God, I love it. He knows who he is alive. Just that tension of him coming into view. Oh my God. So Franz is alive. The monster inside of me isn't inside of me. It's outside of me. So Johan's like, this monster that's making me do these things is actually my father's will, and my father's alive. So where is he? So Johan wants to find his dad. I think it's going to be really funny if this whole entire thing is Johan trying to locate his father to kill him. And then Tenma's gotten caught up in all of this ridiculousness and finds that out at the end. This show and all of its mystery. What are we doing? I have questions. My questions are with the redhead that we think is Bonaparte's other son. What is his and Johan's relationship? How do they know one another? Did they meet in the hotel? Did they talk? What's going on? Where is Bonaparte if he is alive? What did Lunge find out about Lipski? Is Nina gonna be okay? Why does Johan want Nina? Does he just want to make sure she's safe? What's he gonna do with her? Where is Tenma? Where is Eva? What is Rudy finding out with Weissbach? Is Dieter safe with Reichwein? I hope he is, along with Lottie and Carl. This show, we have one episode of break. We have one episode of break. The show takes like a minute break, and then they're like, okay, we're back in the shit again. I don't know if I'm going to be able to wait. I don't know if I'm going to be able to wait, y'all. I may have to watch episode 65 and find out what's going on, because I'm terrified. I want to know what they're going to talk about. I want to know what he's going to get out of Peter. Right now, it's just Peter and Bonaparte that are left, and Johann's whittling them down one by one. Wolf's dead, Gilda whatever's dead, and now we're down to Peter, who's probably going to be dead after this episode, and then Bonaparte. So, oh my God, and Baby's dead. So, I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below. Please no spoilers, hints, or clues. But we'll just have to see. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back very soon with more Monster. Bye.